Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. I do want to say that I am not using the webcam today and I'm using my old software. There is a watermark that says Bandicam. I stopped using this software a few days ago and I kind of got adjusted to a new one. But because I am running low on time, I started recording this video way later than I thought I would. I resorted back to this software because it's quicker and I know it better. So apologize about that. But I do want to say that obviously this video we'll be talking about a fall storm. You could tell by the title. And at this point, any storm I could pretty much call a fall storm because, well, they're going to be fall storms. It's occurring in meteorological fall. And that's kind of what I want to talk about because I've gotten a few comments saying, how can you call them fall storms if it's not a fall storm or if it's not fall? Well, first off, again, usually I kind of grade, a winter storm based on its precip, not when it's occurring in a winter or not. You could have a winter storm in the fall or spring. Same thing with the fall storm. It's more of its characteristics. However, I could also argue that, it is a fall storm because, well, meteorological fall starts September 1st. Astronomical starts 21st. And since this is a meteorology channel, it's better to go off that first definition of meteorological. So, yeah, I do want to say quickly that if you guys are new to this channel, hello and welcome. You can see I'm a hobbyist about the weather enthusiast. So if you like these videos, you could hit the thumbs up button, obviously, and consider subscribing, and that helps out a ton. Obviously, don't subscribe just because I told you so. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, consider leaving them down below. I get to as many as possible, usually all of them. All right, without further ado, this intro was a bit long, but, I wanted to get everything out of the way. Minute 30 seconds. Let's get into this. Notice that we start off by looking at the GFS model. So this is a really good model, Global Forecasting System, that's what it stands for. And as we push this forward, I do apologize. I usually don't talk this fast. I kind of want to add this. But today we'll be probably talking a bit faster because I want to get in a lot of info in a shorter amount of time. So I do apologize. If you're new to this channel, usually I talk a bit slower, and you could probably notice that I'm talking a bit faster if you've watched my other videos. Okay, let's go. So what we have right now is this large high pressure across the eastern seaboard, and we have a low pressure, really one across southern Canada and one across the central plains. All low pressures, by the way, spin counterclockwise. So what does that mean? Well, their wind field spans something like this, and usually the flow is from the south, kind of out ahead of it. And the high pressure, well, it spins clockwise, kind of like a clock, right? So notice these little packed isobars. They're not insanely packed, but definitely a bit windy across Oklahoma today, Missouri, or this would be into tomorrow. What does that mean? Well, that means a lot of warm air from the south is being pumped up way to the north. So if you're to take a look at the 2-meter temperature anomaly, which basically tells us where it is above and below average, look at all those warm temperatures just being absolutely funneled way north. And that happens very often, especially if the circulation of a low pressure is strong, or if it's in coordination, kind of working with in this case, almost too high pressure. So notice what we start seeing is a cold front that is pretty dead. It doesn't have a lot of moisture. It's right there into Saturday and Sunday. Here's the time, by the way, for any date that I'm talking about. September 11th, this is at 7 p.m. And notice that this cold front is rather dead. But as this moisture starts getting funneled from those two high and low pressures, we start seeing that cold front come alive. And what do we see? Well, we see showers and storms kind of acting across the Midwest. Really, probably not as significant as maybe even this GFS shows. But I do think where you will see rain, it will be like a pretty torrential downpour potentially, but definitely a threat for some showers into Monday. This isn't a big fall storm. But I do want to mention that with this flow that these high pressures, this kind of the vacuum they created, look at all this tropical moisture. It was previously just kind of hanging around. Look at this. It moves inland, and potentially this is some sort of tropical system, and that adds a lot of fuel. Maybe not direct precip. You can see the rain kind of stays south, but a lot of humidity. If you were to take a glance at the relative humidity, it's getting thrown up here. So notice that there's this little piece of dry air, and look at all that warm, humid air that's going to interact eventually with this cold front, adding on to that threat. So let's take a look at this. Notice we do have already a lot of moisture. This is kind of the storm, if you will, I'm talking about. It's way up to the north, the actual circulation, but its cold front is rather powerful. Notice another day potentially of severe weather across the Midwest into the plains into Tuesday and Wednesday, which was basically the same day it occurred last week. If you recall, the storms across Michigan, Illinois, and into Canada, they just kind of exited the Northeast yesterday. And look at this. We see this. We see see this low pressure deliver a chunk of cool air behind it as well, but also look at all this precipitation kind of interacting with it. Now, it doesn't really get swept off. This cold front stalls out. We see continued showers across the south, southeast. The flow is there off the ocean with that moisture. It's definitely a bit weakened, but it's, look at that, very strong across the eastern seaboard. But what do we see? Well, we see another system that kind of arrives onto the northwest at the same time the first system is occurring. And look, it picks up this moisture and kind of starts playing around with it, right? The first one drags up a little bit, maybe spurs some showers into Michigan, Indiana. That system passes. We see another stronger low pressure. This one already has quite a bit of precip from the Pacific area. It just drags all this precipitation. And look, it forms a pretty consolidated area of rain across the Midwest. Potentially, look at that comma-shaped low right there. That is that, you know, if this was winter, that would be a blizzard on the backside of it, but it's just not cold enough for that. Well, look, the model actually does show some snow, so that is definitely a possibility. Look at all that cold air. You could see kind of that spearhead shape of this. Of those isobars, those red ones, not the black ones. That is indicating that there's a bit of cool air kind of from the outflow of this system. Think of it as a kind of like a giant tornado, if you will. On a normal tornado, very tiny, obviously, but it has the cool outflow kind of on the backside of it. This is a giant low pressure. Obviously, it's not a tornado, but it acts in the same way, the basic fundamentals. And you can see it's warm out ahead of it, cool behind it. And if we were to take this forward, we see that all this tropical moisture finally does get swept off. Notice after that front, it ceases to exist. But obviously, it not before producing quite a bit more rain across the northeast and areas that it impacts. And I say that because the confidence on that is low. At this time frame, there's several models that show some sort of a snowstorm that I talked about in yesterday's video. We'll have to keep an eye on for that. But that system, you could see whether or not it drops snow, it will probably at least drop a lot of rain across the Midwest and the Northeast. The South, moving towards the north and east, again dragging up a lot of that tropical moisture, and yeah, I mean just streams of moisture. We do start seeing the cool air masses, the 540 line right there, typically referred to as a 32-degree line, dipping further and further south, and all we need is one of these little storms to occur, kind of proceeding a bit, maybe, a bit closer to this 540 line, and we see a decent snow system. And I do want to take a look at the the total accumulated precip. Look at all of that. That is definitely quite a bit, especially across areas where the several storms align. Look at the south. That tropical moisture is definitely adding up to some significant numbers. Let's take a look at the 2-meter temperature anomaly, because I do want to show you that the models, again, they're showing cool air, and it is across the west. Now, there have been a few, and the GFS including, that are showing a bit of that chilly air making its way into the Midwest and Northeast. That's good, because there will be a lot of heat here prior to that. Notice, look, the 15, 16, 17, and we do see a bit of a cooler air mass. But, again, the models, this far out, they do jump around quite a bit. You can see this was 6 hours prior, showed a bit more cold air. 6 hours prior to that showed a lot more cold air, but across the Midwest, so a bit of a disagreement still. But I want to show you the Canadian now and focus back onto that big system and stop talking about the other systems. So notice we have that Pacific moisture. It did drop quite a bit of rain across California and Nevada yesterday across the west. I wouldn't say a lot, but definitely it was kind of a gentle half an inch to even an inch in a few areas. So, it's better than nothing. And, of course, they need it very bad. Notice the Canadian does that same thing, that funnel of strong winds, not only bringing warm air, but also the humidity and also the moisture. And that, again, it kind of makes this cold front that is pretty dead from this system a bit more alive. You could see little spurts of precip. And then when the low pressure that's a bit stronger comes along, develops into a powerful cold front. I think these models are a bit underdoing some of this activity. Regardless, even if this doesn't come to fruition as being a powerful system, there's going to be a lot of moisture lingering. And any low pressure, like the Canadian shows right here, that kind of gets in its vicinity, it's going to start racking this up. And that's going to obviously bring a lot of precip. That's the kind of the precip it's picked up from the land and the Pacific. So you can see it's really favorable environment for a large storm and large precip events. And look at that one right there riding to the north, very moisture laden, and again kind of bordering that 540 line. So we'll have to wait and see what it exactly does with that. Total accumulated precip, quite a bit of rain. I think this is underdone. The Canadian makes things often look a lot less rainier than they actually are. So I don't like looking at this model in particular for the kind of the, I guess, precise precip forecast. Obviously, it's favoring it across the south, the north, and look at that, the northwest, Oregon, Washington, areas that haven't seen rain in such a long time, finally getting some relief. So that is good news. One more model, European. Let's take a look at this. Again, this isn't that system I'm talking about in the title. That's just a lingering one, really too weak to even make a video about. But I just kind of want to show you how that cold front, again, comes alive with all that moisture that's there, and it kind of acts as a warm front once it, you can see it kind of sags down to the south for a bit, but eventually it blows over back to the north right there, and it kind of acts as a warm front. And again, out ahead of this, some chillier air from that cold front. But behind this, that warm airflow will be pushing a lot of heat, humidity into the Midwest, Chicago, Des Moines, Omaha, seeing nice, pretty warm temperatures into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. We start seeing scattered showers, thunderstorms. We see a tropical system potentially moving in onto Texas with more rain. Definitely not good. Potentially some flooding going on there, as that's going to be stalling out there for a sweet old time. Definitely not something you'd like to see. And as we push this forward, right, this is Tuesday still, Wednesday, there's our time right there. And look, we start seeing that cold front. Again, I think that it will look a lot more aggressive on the actual radar than on a weather model like this. And, everything seems not aggressive until you have a giant wall cloud coming at you that has severe thunderstorm warnings, that the sirens are blaring and the lightning is flashing, right? So everything looks unimpressive until it actually is. But regardless, this is still a pretty powerful cold front. It has a lot of moisture to work with, and look, it does drag some of that moisture up, and actually arguably makes the situation worse because it stalls that low pressure. Look, it just sits there across Louisiana because it initially was going to the north. This cold front made it lose its momentum, and before it decides what to do, it drops a lot of rain before that happens. And look at all this precip. I mean, that is a ton from the tropics. And again, we can see continued little low pressures coming along, taking advantage of this, developing into, beasts potentially. The GFS did show this system, but it was further, if you recall, across Saskatchewan and showed a bit of snow behind it. Look what the European does. A classic cold front, warm front, a comet shape, kind of band of precip behind it. Again, this would be typically a blizzard or a snowstorm if it was just a bit colder, and there could be some snow mixing in once it gets far enough. And look at all the cold air kind of wraps in around it. But yeah, lots of rain, and definitely multi-day rain events for the Northeast if this were to happen, that large second system, if you will. And then notice that it may seem like if it's quiet and maybe for a few days, but you can see more moisture start circulating, another kind of trough with a little bit of a low pressure out ahead of it that you could imagine conglomerates into some sort of a precip maker past the 240-hour timeline. Look at all this precip to the north, the northeast, especially the south. Those aren't good amounts. That is definitely way, way too high to be comfortable with. But look at that. That is some good news right there across Oregon and Washington, finally seeing some rainfall. In terms of temperatures, I know folks may be wondering, it looks, again, more hot than cold for a lot of folks other than maybe the Northwest. So notice, right, the heat, again, we have that funnel kind of pattern working out, and a lot of heat, a lot of warmth, lots of humidity. There are going to be brief cool downs where a system passes, or maybe where we have a bit of rain-cooled air, but you can see the warm air persists, excluding the northwest and southwestern Canada. The European, if you recall, does develop that powerful system, so obviously naturally behind that there is a bit of cool air, which you can see slides into the Northeast and Great Lakes. However, that quickly gets replaced with some heat. And this is now the later half of September, the 20th, and we could still be dealing with extremely warm temperatures for this time of the year. And I want to just show you that. Look. 80s, 70s, hold on, I don't think that's the peak of the day. There we go, look at that. 80s, 90s, without a problem occurring across many of these locations, especially the plains, where it is easy time, just kind of that warm air rising towards Kansas, Nebraska, and areas surrounding. So that is definitely something that is going to be a bit of an issue as well, potentially exaggerate some droughts, but at this time of the year, it would be better for it to start drying out for harvests. You usually don't want the soggiest of the weather, and most things that are, have grown are already done growing for the year. Most things already finishing up and starting to dry. So, if you are, depends on what you're growing. Corn and soybean needs to be dried before you harvest it, especially for feed and livestock food, and that is mainly what is grown across these areas. So, at least that's going to aid in that, but definitely not a completely dry pattern for these folks. And I do want to show you quickly weather ensembles. These are a group of models, and I'll show you. It'll speak for itself. Okay, so let me put this on with you folks. EPS members, this is, I don't actually want to look at those because those don't show everything at once. I have to go through that individually, and I don't have time for that, unfortunately. Midwest, let's take a look at this. Precipitation type ensemble. Here it shows us many different ensembles simultaneously. Let's take a look at the newest one. Yep, it's loaded in. And look what we have. We have a lot of, obviously, let me take a look at the total precipitation, not the kind of the radar. And I just want to show you this area by area. Let's go all the way out to 360 where it ends. And come on. Oh my goodness, it is glitching. There we go. Notice a lot of coloration that are that is in the orange, the yellow, and anything above kind of that yellow color, if you will. It's above an inch. Anywhere in that orange, that's 3, 4, and look at some of the models. Again, if we have several systems overlapping, potentially producing some of those gray pink colors, 8, 9 inches. And yeah, definitely an active pattern for the Midwest. Some are showing a lot of activity, some a bit less, still impressive amounts across isolated areas. This is the model one prior to this one I was just showing you. Again, let's go through its fair share of glitching. Come on, let's go. And you can see, oh goodness, well, it's not done. There we go. And notice that this one did also show a lot of models, a lot of that orange flare color. I want to show you more of the United States, but I can't, unfortunately. I could show you the eastern United States, but you can see it's a lot more zoomed out now. 384 hours, look at that. Come on, right here, that's where I am. Oh, there, it's still glitching. Sorry about this, folks. This is kind of the woes with the websites sometimes. And look how bright that gets. Look how bright that is. Obviously, the tropics you can see are included, so a lot of pink colors with 20-25 inches of rain. But notice that across the Northeast, some include a lot of rain. I mean, look at that one or this one. 7, 8, 9 inches, and then some keep it a bit drier. Look at that one, insanely wet. So it looks as if there's a wet pattern coming for the western coast of the United States, a bit drier. Goodness, it's gonna be glitching again. But come on. I would typically let this load before I record it, but again, I want to just show you this so I could upload this within a reasonable amount of time. Unfortunately, not a lot of rain for California or the Southwest. You can see some models show some into Arizona and New Mexico. One does show it into California, but a lot of it is into the Northwest. At least it's the Northwest that sees it. You can see some, though, show a bit less, like this model. Some show quite a bit more, like this one, showing 3 to 4 inches in the Cascades. Some show a bit more. Again, kind of variations. It's a bit hard to see, I know, especially for mobile users. But British Columbia will be getting impacted hard by this, and Southern Canada. Hopefully, once the winter comes, we see this pattern take hold more into portions of the central west, not just, the northwestern corner, which was really what happened last year, unfortunately, which is why the drought wasn't alleviated that much. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya, bye.